So today, welcome everyone. We are kicking off today's exclusive to talk about how to deliver content for large audiences. Size doesn't matter. Sorry, we're going to be a little punny today. We're a little punchy. So, this exclusive is really going to focus on how XCL can support large audiences. And I have a few questions for Rob on how XCL can do that. So, let's get it started. I want to just start, Rob, by talking about why XCL is uniquely good for audiences that are very large, or why size doesn't matter in audience size with XCL. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is?
Sure. So the basis of why we provide an unlimited users environment, and I think that's what we're getting to, that size of your audience doesn't matter, is that from the perspective of XCL, we have less overhead than any other tool or platform, LMS, whatnot, and so forth, because we don't have user accounts. When you remove that reliance on user accounts, you remove the reliance on all the stuff that happens when a user tries to log in, which is work for computers to do. Our system doesn't have that level of work. So you provide a link, we collect data on it. There is some work. Your content is produced to that user, is distributed to that user, and they self-identify and away they go. This allows us to basically provide that link at an almost unlimited scale versus something that has a user account system where each user would need to register, log in. Those logins would push against the system. There's a nerd answer, and then there's the kind of more accepted answer is our XCL does less work. It does more work that's important. It does less work that's administrative. So we can provide this very large audience model, which comes in very handy. I think there's a view of training and content distribution that doesn't include incredibly large audiences for that reason. And now we can start thinking about that. We can start thinking about the problems that this type of thing can solve.
So I have so many questions about the user account piece. Do you mind if I just check my understanding on this?
For
So when
sure.
you say you don't need a user account, that means that I don't have to have a set of users that have access. In fact, users don't have to log in at all. Is that true?
This is true. So to say that there's no user accounts is maybe an error. You have a user account as a content administrator, but that's the only account that we need. Once you have that account set up and everything's ready to go, hence the lower price, hence the smaller footprint, is that we're only really managing content administrators. From the user perspective, the student perspective, no user account required. We don't need to carry that load, and we don't need a platform to support that load. They don't have anywhere to log into. So we don't need screens for that. We don't need those things that would normally come with a user account. And that just gives us all the freedom, or gives you, the content administrator, all the freedom to do what you wanted to do with the tool, which is distribute content.
Okay, that's super cool. And one slight side follow-up question. If I do already have user accounts, this tool can still work with user accounts?
It can. So a couple different ways it can work. We can connect this tool so that it works with your internal network. For example, if you have a VPN, if you have a single sign-on solution in your organization, we can work with that. And that further reduces the friction for the user, but also works with their existing user credentials so that we can get the information that we need to get in order to complete statements in XAPI, nerd way of saying we can associate content performance data with a person. We don't need to have that user account in our platform to do that. We just need the machines and the network to tell us what we need to know, and we can set that up. And then we can extend that service beyond the limits of that network. So if you have a part of your network that's beyond that, for example, contractors or customers, even prospects, even, these links are useful outside of that network as well.
This explains why the audience size doesn't matter because XCL is not dependent on user accounts and also why it saves you a bunch of money because you don't have to charge per user.
For sure. For sure. Without that overhead per user, the sky's the limit. Large organizations or very small organizations that have large audiences or small audiences, everyone kind of plays in the same sandbox. Essentially, size doesn't matter.
That is amazing. Okay, now that we understand why XCL works this way, I have some questions just about specific use cases of how this could work. So, if I was an organization that had a really large public audience, I want to deliver content or learning experiences to a really just to the public. So, could be an unlimited number of users. How would that work if I don't know who the folks are that might access my content?
So good question. Good question. So this is part of this idea of we're disrupting the model that is normalized for content tracking. So some of these use cases seem foreign, but XCL handles them very well. We produce a link, and that link can be used anywhere. You can host that link on a public internet site. You can host it on a private intranet site. You can put it on a SharePoint site, a Google form, anywhere where people go. You can put that link in that traffic. You can assign it to a picture, a button, however you'd like to do it. You can distribute by text message if you want it to a wide audience, if that's how you communicate with your audience. And then, of course, there's messaging applications like Slack, Discord, WhatsApp, Hangouts, Teams, and on. There's 1,000 of them. Anywhere where a text link can be posted, these XCL links can be posted and then consumed by the users. The users self-identify. Or you can set your form up to have users identify regionally, or you can set your form up to have your users identify randomly. It really gives the control to you as a content administrator to what level of detail of the data coming in that you want to see.
So I could
How?
deliver content anywhere, really, with this link.
Anywhere,
Cool. Okay, so now I
anywhere.
have a specific use case. I am an organization and I deliver customer education through my website. And let's say I have a whole bunch of videos that explain how my product works for my customers, and I want to make these resources available. Can I get insight into how much that content's being used? I'm going to put this on my website. You said I can do that so that it's available to my customers. But what happens when I put that on my website? What do I understand then about how my customers are using my videos?
So for sure, you've put this link out for your customers to consume. XCL collects performance data. So long as those users identify in some way, even randomly, you'll see how each video is doing. You'll know how many people clicked on the video. You'll see analytics, much like a YouTube video or anything like that. You're going to see how long people were watching the video, how often they skipped around, where they paused. You're going to have data that you can use to further refine your video selection. Perhaps they're too long. Perhaps people are just fast forwarding to the good bit, or they're maybe too short. Perhaps people are watching the videos over and still not getting, the resolution. They're still contacting support. So you can use this tool to do two things, is to see if your campaign was successful, and then of course see where the holes in that success might be for enhanced success in the future.
And I'm asked about videos, but does this work for other types of content too? What if I just have PDFs or static content? What can XCL tell me about how my customers are engaging with that?
Oh, for sure. Videos, PDFs, we're collecting all kinds of data like what pages people are on, the amount of dwell time per page, the total overall time in document, and we're measuring completions in everything. Videos, we're measuring completions. Did they actually get to the end? In a PDF, we're measuring completions. Did they get to that last page? That's important. In images, even if it's an infographic or just some additional marketing or perhaps just some instruction or a diagram. Did people open it? Are they even looking at this? Did they zoom in on it? What are they doing with the content? And then, of course, there's other types of content like downloads and websites. Did they click on these tools and resources? Are they using the suite of things that are available to them? Yeah. So there's lots of data that we can collect that has that double role. The data has the role of saying, hey, this is how it's being engaged with. But the other side of that is it can be also analyzed to see if it's having an effect when correlated against, say, support requests or feedback.
That is very cool and something that I know a lot of folks haven't been able to do delivered through their platform, so that's amazing. I'm going to ask, what if I don't want to deliver my content online? What if I actually have a physical space or like my customers are in person? Can I still give them access to content and track how they're engaging with it?
Absolutely. So let me show you some examples. I have a little bit of a slide show here to
Ooh,
illustrate some of the
like you knew
ways
this
that
question was coming, Rob.
it's like I was prepared for it. I'm not sure. I just threw it together in the last 4 seconds. Here we go. My AI is working overtime. So essentially, here are some examples. So when we create a link in XCL, we also create a QR code that goes along with that link. So that QR code simply leads you to that link. And this gives us a unique opportunity to present these QR codes in places that aren't online. Some of those use cases could be posters, signs, infographics within an organization, marketing materials. Here's some examples of QR codes that are presently being used in marketing. You have the power using XCL to create these exact same things. You don't need to be a powerful marketing company to have the technology of a few dots and lines. But at the end of the day, now we can track the performance of this QR code in this area, which would help in a lot of ways from a perspective of, are people engaging with my marketing material? Are people engaging with my poster, my sign? Are people wanting to know more about my infographic? Do people want to know about the Christmas party at the office? It can be simple things, it can be big things. That's one of the use cases for our QR code that we automatically generate. Another one is product packaging. And this one may be something that we haven't thought about with traditional e-learning design and learning content is product packaging. This is a huge opportunity. We have all this surface area that we can use to place these QR codes and learn more about a product or learn the instructions of how to set a product up. This can be PDF documents. This can be a storyline, e-learning. This can be anything, really. A video on how to use something or how to maintain it. Another use case would be actual physical places. We've seen these throughout our lives and probably didn't notice them, but there's a lot of places where there's a QR code on a signage of a historic building giving you more information about the history of that building. Would be great to know if that's being engaged with. The historical societies probably have some requirements when it comes to how often these are being used. And then, of course, the analytics of the adventure that a human is taking while experiencing that content can help us refine that experience so that we're up to date. We keep our content modern and we make sure that it's useful and being consumed. So here's some examples of the usual suspects: a museum or an art gallery, but even for things like signage of streets and buildings that are maybe not even historic, just letting us know what the purpose of it is. And things like libraries or buildings where donors have made a building possible or made the maintenance of it possible, some content to maybe support them or give them the thanks that they need for doing those kinds of things.
It's funny because I
Sure,
remember when
there's so many use
QR codes
cases.
first came on the scene and we thought about QR codes as being able to support learning and additional information in physical locations. And it seemed like early days that wasn't going to be that there wasn't a lot of adoption or uptake. And now I feel like I see QR codes everywhere. Like there's more and more recognition that people will scan, will engage, will interact with content that they need when they're in a physical location. But what you're saying is not only can you provide the QR code, but you can also track all the engagement with that content to understand how it's being used, which I think is one of the things that I've never really thought about with QR codes. You post them up there and then you hope that people engage with the content. Now you can actually track what people are doing and specifically how they're engaging with it with XCL. I'll let you get to your last example.
Oh, and just to keep going on that disruption of a QR code link, such a simple thing. It's such an old tech thing. This is not new.
Yep.
This is not a new invention. But imagine a world where you can go into a factory or a place with complex equipment, and there are QR codes on the equipment that literally give you just-in-time support, performance support, training, maintenance schedule information, things like that, disassembly instructions, usage instructions. That's all available at your fingertips These aren't hard systems to build. XCL makes it instantaneous. As soon as you create a link, you have a QR code. If that link happens to be maintenance information for the XYZ piece of equipment at the factory, have a sticker printed, slap it on the side, make sure it doesn't get knocked off. That's a way to do it. There's areas within buildings where perhaps there's safety instructions for that area. Perhaps there's a significance to that area, context of what that area is used for onboarding training, for just regular use, or if things change. These QR codes can be infinitely useful, placed on the floor for instructions on, for example, during the COVID pandemic, the QR codes were used extensively to tell people how to use a space appropriately within the rules of the pandemic
I
for
have a very
change.
specific example that I just engaged with that this would have been perfect for. I just went to an orchid show. I don't know a lot about orchids. There were QR codes across the show floor for me to learn more. But if I was the organizer and I was like, what are people trying to learn about these orchids? I could, with XCL, track all of the interaction with the QR codes and figure out what is the information people are most interested in. How do I provide that more readily? Like, how do I adjust my event to really highlight the things that people are most interested in? That's a level of depth of insight that I think most folks aren't getting currently with this QR code use case. All right. I see you're going to show me how to build a QR code, which was one of my next questions is how can I actually do this with XCL?
Yeah, so I just wanted to like really quickly show and just like to double down on this QR code idea. I know this is old tech, it's QR codes, they're very easy, but just to show you, this is XCL. This is a link in XCL. It takes about a minute to put a link together. If you have the content already, it takes a minute. It takes the length of time to create content plus 1 minute to create a link. But when we get to the end of our very simple three-step process of creating a link, we have this opportunity to publish. And when we publish, a couple beautiful things happen. One is a massive amount of confetti. Brings us joy. We're very excited about that. But also the QR code is presented. It's instantaneously created. Let me tell you how cool this thing is. This QR code doesn't change. Your content can change. You can get information, you can get data back on this content that clearly shows that it has deficiencies. You can fix those deficiencies, upload content, do trials and tests, and this QR code will remain the same. So if this printed on your packaging, it's on a poster, there's no reprinting required. This isn't going to another link. This is the link forever. So long as you keep this link alive, this QR code won't change. So this makes things work really smoothly in cases where you have a video that might need an update a year from now or a month from now, or the pandemic's over, or the rules have changed in whatever the situation is, or that area of the building has changed. So your link can be tied to a thing, and then the content can be revolved in and out as needed. So that's just another kind of interesting use case, another disruption to the model of the
Well, that
existing tools that we have.
that certainly helps if I'm going to print this on a sign or, as you said, like on my packaging, because that can get really expensive and something needs to change in my content. I don't have to worry about changing my packaging or changing the QR code on my sign suddenly. Like that's consistent. I swap out the content and then I can continue to track data.
Absolutely, absolutely. You could engrave it into the marble of the floor of your building, as I would say. I maybe wouldn't recommend that, but at the end of the day, think of a use case like a poster-sized infographic. It's performance support, helping people understand a new process or a new policy. Now you can include some QR codes that give people a deeper dive into some of the parts of that infographic that might be more complex or may need additional information, which helps everyone. It helps people get that in additional context, and it helps you, the content creator of a simple infographic who's never known how many eyes were really on it, how many people needed more information on certain parts, how many people really interacted with that content, how many people engaged with it. Getting those statistics can be very validating whether that infographic campaign is even worthwhile.
A couple things I'm noticing. One, and I know we went down the QR code rabbit hole for a minute, but I think for good reason because all of the things that you've been talking about in terms of potential with the QR code is also potential with the link. So it's just what mechanism do you want to use to deliver it? But no matter what, you don't have limitations on who can access it unless you set up SSO or some filter in advance of getting access to XCL. And you can put this content anywhere. So unlimited audience, unlimited potential of location and access points. And then it sounds like unlimited data and what you can actually track. Can you set the parameters of what information is most important to you to be able to track about that content?
We track as much about a piece of content as you could ever want. So it really comes down to reporting. You can report on that or analyze that data at your whim and at your leisure. We showed another exclusive where Sarah showed the GPT that literally you ask questions to in plain language and it will give you answers as it analyzes your content.
I'm excited about the potential for this to solve a bunch of problems for organizations that have been limited by user counts and per user pricing models in terms of how and who they've been able to provide learning content to, and the trade-off of how much they're able to track about the engagement with that content. Um, this seems like it solves both problems: unlimited users, robust data and analytic tracking, all in one cool tool.
Absolutely. Two last things I want to say. First one is, and Sarah just reminded me of this, that when it comes to something like an infographic, a poster, something physical or visual, a QR code can also be used in a sense of providing some level of accessibility for those who can't actually see a poster or an infographic. So that's an opportunity that we've maybe not had in the past that we have now. It's always been available for sure. We didn't create QR codes, but the fact that we create it at the point when you need it lowers that friction. You don't have to find another tool to make a QR code from. You have a link that's never going to expire. These are good attributes of an XCL content link. The last one is a distraction from what we're talking about. It's what do we do when there's a need for a link for an incredibly small audience? For example, an in-class learning session. How do we use an XCL link to add value to that experience? And there are ways. And one of those ways is we can create a link that's only for us, that other people use to tell us that they've been to a place or a thing. Same kind of theory as having a QR code on a building, but maybe it's just on my badge, and now I know that you've talked to me, or now I know that you've come to my session or been in my space. So that's another way to use an XCL link in an environment that's maybe not even an intended use case, but it's part of the flexibility model of an XCL link and the fact that we simply collect data on links and the usage of those links. So there's probably more use cases that we haven't even thought of that this is really useful for, that I'm looking forward to the future of getting the feedback on how that's being used.
I am super excited that you're telling me I can deliver content to unlimited audiences. I can track all kinds of data to analyze how people are engaging with my content. And it can be anywhere from a shop floor to a Slack channel to an in-person live event training. Seems like the possibilities are endless, really, to think about what are the creative use cases for using this. One thing I want to note, and I know we're at time, we talked, and we generally work a lot in the learning space and talk about delivering learning experiences and learning content. But you actually talked about marketing content as well and examples. So while this really was intended and initially developed to help support learning, it doesn't seem like it's limited to those use cases. There's lots of opportunities to just track content engagement.
Oh, absolutely. And just to feed on that, there are many cases where even in learning, we have to do some marketing. We have to
Yeah.
entice some people on taking an elective course or elective piece to upgrade skills. And in those marketing messages, we don't want to have to rely on a marketing platform, which you don't know how to use or likely don't have corporate access to. This is an opportunity to put a link in an email and just see if there's interest, see if people are clicking on it, even if it's not the training itself, if it's just messaging about the training. So that's just, again, it's opening the door to use cases that we maybe haven't really considered in the past and certainly aren't part of the very opinionated model of an LMS system.
That it's like marketing tools for learning professionals and learning tools for marketing professionals. Thanks for joining, everyone. And thanks, Rob, so much for talking me through all the capabilities of XCL to support unlimited audiences. We will see everyone next Thursday when we cover our next topic.
Excellent.